All right, I think we are broadcasting now. So we'll let folks trickle in here, and then you and I can continue to talk about 3-year-olds and their various intricacies. So he was JP was talking to one girl, a posse of girls. He had an audience. What was the deal there?
Yeah, it was a bit of a gaggle of girls. There was like 3 or 4 of them, and he was just kind of showing off and like talking to them. And I, first of all, I mean, I was a little jealous. I was like, who are these hussies? And then I like went over, and he was like, I said, he was like, Mom, go. So I'm already heartbroken, and he's only 3. It's like, come on, you're supposed to love me longer than this.
Come on,
So
come on,
a lot
guys.
of fun.
So are that's awesome. Is his preschool close, far?
Yeah, his
Really
preschool is
easy?
pretty close, which is great because living in the city, everywhere is a commute. So
Yeah.
it's great that it's close. But yeah, he goes full day, which is good. And incredibly, they do such a good job that the kids wear their masks all day.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, it makes
Our
me
new
feel less nervous.
I know, right? Our new reality. Oh my goodness gracious. All right, wonderful. Well, I think we can get started here. We have our folks trickling in here.
Right.
Um, Everybody, thank you for joining us for another sales strategy office hours here. We're super stoked to have Jess Klek here. A little bit more about her in a second, but she's a enterprise sales leader and now a new vertical sales leader at SalesLoft. So more on that in a second here. So sales strategy office hours is a modern sales production. Really where it comes from is I used to do this a lot with sales leaders, founders, etc. Hey, I want to pick your brain on XYZ. Can we hop on a call, etc. And so one of the things what I kind of realized was that maybe doing it in public would be helpful for the other people who have similar problems and would like to, hear the potential answers. And so it's delightful to have august sales leaders, sales thinkers to kind of share their knowledge there. So what we'll do is we'll try to tackle 5 to 8 questions over the hour here. Keep it moving. We'll promote people from the audience. So if you have a question you'd like to have Jess and myself tackle, Jess has been around for a long time in sales leadership, having sold HR tech, talent acquisition, now sales tech, etc. So she can pretty much tackle anything, and I can pretend to tackle pretty much anything. So really excited about that. Actually, with that, Jess, you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me today. As Pete mentioned, I'm Jess Klek. I'm currently our SVP of Vertical Sales at SalesLoft. Recently, we made the decision to verticalize, so I'm leading that charge, which will be super exciting. Prior to that, I led the enterprise sales there. Prior to that, I spent several years leading various teams at LinkedIn, did some time at Salesforce, and prior to that, here in Chicago, worked at Courier for 7 years, right at the heart of the market when we were taking market share just by the handful, fist over fist. So it was a really, really exciting time to be part of that hyper growth, but that sort of carried through my career. So I'm excited to be here today and answer your guys' questions.
Yeah, everyone should be really stoked because those are some pretty epic sales organizations. Like LinkedIn sales organization, obviously no joke. Salesforce's sales organization, obviously no joke. So thank you for sharing with us. For folks who don't know me, I'm Pete Kazanji. I am the founder of Modern Sales. I also am the founder of Atrium. We make sales performance analysis software that does the analysis for you. So turns out I think a lot about process excellence sales and kind of like data-driven sales management and sales operations and things like that. Actually, Jess and I were talking about this ahead of the show here. Previously, founded a software company called TalentBin, a recruiting software company that ultimately was acquired by Monster Worldwide. And that's kind of where I went from being product management, product marketing, kind of like business generalist founder to first sales rep, sales manager, sales leader at that startup. And then once we were acquired by Monster, got into kind of more like quote unquote sales leadership in large, slow sales organizations. And one of the things that came out of that is I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales. But I'm really excited to have you here today. So everybody, for folks who are here, just go ahead and drop your questions in the chat room. Questions here, please. I think that we had somebody that dropped a question ahead of time. Let's see if he's here. Oh, there's Charlie. All right, wonderful. So Charlie, I'm going to go ahead and grab you here and bring you up to be a panelist. Hey, there he is. All right.
Hey, Charlie.
Wonderful.
Hey, Jess. Hey, Pete. Nice to meet you, voice to voice.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So Charlie, can you just introduce yourself really quickly? The current sales organization that you're at, or the most recent one, and just kind of give some parameters around like what the go-to-market looked like, just so folks can kind of understand the the sales velocity, the sales motion, et cetera. And then we can get into your question here on I guess it was Rep Acumen, huh?
Yeah. Well, so my background is I'm a recovering consultant. I've been with Anaplan, or I was with Anaplan for almost 3 years, and I was driving the go-to-market initiatives, and was part of the sales ops organization. And so I was in charge of our account planning process and became our account planning guru. And so,
Okay.
Jess, as someone who specializes in high risk and high ASP selling environments, one of the things with Anaplan is one of the ways to drive growth was to hire more AEs and train them on how to sell big, complex, challenger sale type projects. And
Right.
and if they don't have the business acumen, it was really, really challenging. It's kind of like, is it nature versus nurture? And so my question to you, Jess, is from what you've seen, what's the most effective way you've found to increase sales rep business acumen? And then I've got a follow-up question after that.
Sure. Yeah, you're exactly right. Anytime we try to increase our presence, we think, let's just hire more reps, right? We need more revenue. Let's put more bodies into it. With a more strategic sales process and higher ASP, it does require more subject matter expertise, right? It's more, even though you're using a challenger sales methodology, it has to be more solutions oriented. And that's just how enterprise buys. They like to feel like you truly understand their business. So something you can do to help increase business acumen is build that into your team's day. So some things that we do on a daily basis is we'll have someone like sort of own it for the week. So they'll do research in the market, like, hey, here's what's happening in sales engagement. So we're up to date on what's happening in our industry. Specifically, if someone has an expertise in, like, for instance, we're verticalizing, so financial services, we're really studying that market day in and day out. So all of the websites, all of the companies we're following, we're looking on their financial updates on their pages, on their press releases, and we're reading their K1s or their investor reports. So it's sort of a daily activity to increase business acumen, and I think you can also measure it. There's things you can do. You can gamify it, right? You can put a spiff behind it, but essentially we make it a part of our learning every single day. And if you haven't developed this, something I recommend is I make sure that my reps take an hour every day to do something that sort of promotes their own learning, whether that's taking a LinkedIn learning course, whether that's just doing some research on customers, whether that's taking time out of the workday to read a book. But all of that builds that muscle of that business acumen. We also have an incredible tool called Conversation Intelligence. And so we'll highlight calls specifically that we feel, either we did well at or we didn't. And we use that from a business acumen perspective as well, because that really helps us sort of hone our skills on what we're hearing from other customers and like verticals. So
how do you gamify it? Because you're talking about gamifying.
Yeah. So we've done contests around it. So you know, how many articles did you read, or if we set a goal, usually we do a book a quarter, but if you finish it early, or step up to sort of do a book report, right? Or if you can bring to the table an example of where you applied the knowledge from the book. But yeah, I mean, you can put all sorts of spins on it to get people to do the work. The idea is, though, that you want them to put time in their schedules to do the work.
Yes, calendar is destiny, as I tell my reps. Yeah, so I think some of the things that we've done there, Charlie, that have been successful is just from an onboarding standpoint, having like a pretty intentional curriculum. So I actually have a Google document. I'm a big templates person. So I have a pre-homework Google Doc template that has a bunch of reading materials in it. It's got chapters from founding sales. It's got previous call recordings. It's got a variety of other things, and it's shared with account executives, like new hires, out before they even join, right? Because it allows them to consume it. I'm like, here you go. I forked this template. Here's yours. I want you to go through this and consume it. It's probably like 10 or 20 hours of work. I try to get it out to them, like pretty far in advance. It's not like, hey, spend 20 hours like the week before you're there, but they should be able to consume it over time, and just highlight things in green as you go, such that that I know that it's actually been consumed. So that's something that I've done that people end up hitting the ground running. With respect to what Jess was saying about books, in our case, because Atrium is all about data-driven sales performance, instrumentation, and management, we have our reps read Cracking the Sales Management Code before they join. We're a big book organization as well. We actually use it we do a lot of inbound programs around it. We actually use Jeremy Donovan's book as an inbound demo incentive. Yeah, but like, so for leading sales development, et cetera. We've done some book club stuff. So, Cracking the Sales Management Code, Transparency Sale was one that we did a book club on, leading sales development, and just kind of like rotating them in there, because I forget who it was the other day who posted it, but like, you'd be shocked, like, you read like 3 or 4 books in a subject matter, and like pretty quickly you can outstrip the expertise of a lot of people who are like operators in that market, just because people aren't super proactive about self-education necessarily. Like, all the nerds here are, obviously, but like people just get busy, and so pretty quickly as an account executive, if you can be like citing different books or what have you, that really raises your credibility and lets you talk turkey with folks. So those are some of the things that we've done there. Charlie, you said you had a follow-up question too?
So thank you for that. The whole gamification, the fact that books and the homework, you can't get around it. I mean, you've got to do the work. So back to doing the work, once you, in this high CSP, high ASP, high risk, kind of complex sale, one of the things that we did was focused on the account planning, and that's the extended team account planning, old school. Let's get the CS, let's get the sales management, let's get pre-sales, let's get the partner in and conduct, all right, what's the problem? What are the use cases? How do we, if we've already landed, how do we expand? And it's just a wonderful brainstorm session, and we capture actions. And so, I've been told that, hey, we can do that through AI now. And yeah, it's kind of old school, but, I want to hear from you, Jess and Pete. Is that really old school? And what can be done to automate it? What can be done to, again, bring that business acumen and business understanding of where to add value, where that, combining the problem statement with the product, with the, where value lives.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I work for a company that does sales engagement. So a lot of even the outbound motion is automated. But internally, we still leverage that same process, that account planning process.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a technology that can replace heads in a room having a conversation, right? Especially when it's a high value customer or a high value prospect.
Yeah.
We kind of call it surrounding the account. So to your point, we bring in all of the cross-functional stakeholders. Do we have executive alignment? How else can we leverage connections? How else can we expand that account? I honestly, we use technologies to help inform us. You know, data from Salesforce, data from our platform, Lucid Chart to help build an org chart. I mean, there's tons of products out there that can help you in the process, but I don't think there's, or nor would I trust any sort of AI component to replace the actual conversation and the experience that our humans are bringing to that conversation in the table. So those are just my thoughts. I think what you're thinking about is right. But I don't know, Pete, do you have any differing thoughts there?
How about this? As a software entrepreneur and purveyor of magical technology, I feel that oftentimes what ends up happening is people will try to substitute magical technology for, you know, there's the people, process, and technology, and adding technology without the people and the process, usually you end up with like technology that doesn't get used and you don't get like the value out of it. Unfortunately, there's a whole market of people like me who are like, no, the technology will do everything for you. And you know, and so I think there are some environments wherein that's potentially the case, where it's like lower complexity or whatever. But the higher and higher you get up the market, like you see this with like chatbots or whatever. Oh, you know, chatbots are going to sell software, like sell things. No, they're not. They're going to answer like very basic. They're going to answer very, very basic support requests, or they're going to be used for like routing people to a calendar to have a meaningful conversation with a human, at least right now. So wonderful. Well, Charlie, good to see you, man. Thank you for the wonderful questions, and you have a good weekend. Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks for the answers. Appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
You betcha. All right. So I think we had a really cool question here from Barry.
Hi, Barry.
Grab Barry here. Gonna go ahead and promote you to a panelist. Barry, there he is, a frequent office hours participant. You there? Unmute audio.
And unmute the audio. There we go. Hi, Jess. Hey, Pete.
Hi, Barry.
Barry, I love your art. Good job.
Yeah, I don't have that formal library that a lot of the people have. I
like yours.
in the background there. But yeah, Jess, you had mentioned up front that one of your initiatives right now is a verticalization strategy.
Yeah.
And we just wanted you to talk a little bit about that, how you prioritize, you know, the changes that you're making, you know, particularly around how you assess the opportunity, you know, by segment. And then the follow-up is once you're undertaking that change, how are you managing the disruption and the changing of the accounts and the like?
And Barry, could you just really quickly, could you just introduce yourself and,
sorry
give
about that. Well,
context on what your what
so
your org
I've been
is
a long-time consultant
context
in strategic strategy and ops guy in the space, and I've been at Gartner and other information technology companies.
Okay.
Now I'm back in the software business within the last month, working for HCL Technologies, and they are basically, we purchased IBM's on-premise tools.
Got it. Okay. Wonderful. Jess, please, you are the expert on this.
Well, as I was saying, Barry, super timely because we are going through this entire process right now.
Oh, wow.
So to answer the first part of the question, we internally sort of put together a tiger team consisting of cross-functional partners across the org to assess the product market fit, if we were ready as an organization to verticalize, if we were going to, which vertical we're going to go after. So we have a tiger team of about 13 people, from ELT down to PMM, sales leadership, et cetera. And we actually also hired a consultant that is very specific to verticalization. We decided, based on feedback directly from the field, that financial services was the first sort of foray into verticals. We had a good product market fit. We categorized all of the different sub verticals within that vertical, and then prioritized based on a few categories that we measured them against. For us, security, regulatory and compliance, lowest barrier to entry, things like that, right? So once we sort of identified financial services and then the sub verticals, we prioritized those sub verticals to the top 3 that we were going to kind of condense and go for. So we're taking a bit of a crawl, walk, run approach where our fiscal year is February. So we're kicking off this project now. So we're hiring and staffing the team. We're getting enablement resources together. We're going to have marketing support for content, personas, messaging, all of the stuff you need to really go to market in a new space, right? But to the second part of the question, that alleviates and eliminates a bit of the disruption because we're not taking every account that we've deemed financial services right away. Right. So we actually broke it up into 3 sort of categories. Greenfield territory, so no opportunities, nothing doing, right? Those we did broader, right? So if there was nothing doing, those went into the FinServ pot. Then we looked at current customers. We decided at this point that we're going to focus up market and revisit down market come February. So that transactional sale, we have a much, a very tenured commercial sales team. We want them to continue focusing on, that repeatable, scalable process they're used to doing. They can close that financial services business much faster and better, quite frankly, than we could right now. So we're not touching that.
Sure.
The customers that are enterprise mid-market, more upstream, we're bringing over as well. If there's no renewal opportunity or upsell, those will come over now. If there is an opportunity or upsell happening, we'll let that rep sort of close that out with the intention that post-sale, it will move to us. And then there's the open opportunities, which are the heaviest and the most disruption to the field, right? Because, I'm working an opportunity, but it's a 300-day-old opportunity. It's been in our stage 1. You have no next steps, but you're working this opportunity.
Right. No, it's going to close. They're going to buy.
It's going to close. So we gave a review period. So we're not being totally mean. We're letting them keep within reason. And if they have a valid explanation and they can prove that it's a workable opportunity, they can keep it through the quarter. It will count towards enterprise. So our core business, it won't count towards fins, but then it will come over the quarter after. So I think the best thing about this crawl, walk, run is it's not entirely disruptive. The bad thing about it is it's entirely disruptive because in my perspective, ripping the Band-Aid off once is far better than dying by 1,000 cuts, right? Yeah. It's hard for reps to give up accounts, even if they're not working them, right?
Of course.
So we'll stay tuned to see if this works out. I think it will. But that's sort of how we thought about it and how we're implementing it right now.
Right. Hey, one other, and I know, Pete, you're going to jump in and you always have some great insights too, but the other question is, especially now, like in the COVID environment, where you get certain verticals that get hit hard, depending on whatever it is. So your hospitality and retail vertical, would be crushed, in the last, 6 months. Whereas financial services has, their peaks and valleys too, where they're doing great and they're getting crushed. So that's the part that I've always struggled with when I've worked in, when you're planning and trying to goal for the verticals. Yeah. So that's the second follow-up of how are you playing? What are you doing with the nuances of, A versus B when they're affected differently during the course of the year?
Sure.
I think a lot of it comes to product market fit for the vertical, right? And outside of economic environment or impact, is that vertical ripe for the transformation that we can deliver with our technology? And the answer is, despite the economic circumstances, financial services is in fact even more ready because they're usually the slowest to market. They're usually the hardest businesses to get to go through any kind of transformation. But specifically because we're selling sales engagement and sales transformation, the way that they've traditionally gone to market is just not even possible right now, right? Like there's health restrictions on even being within 6 feet of one another. And the way that they were doing business has fundamentally changed. So for that reason, that's why we really focused in on financial services. For the other verticals, it's a bit of, that's why I sort of like this testing process, because we'll see what happens in the next 6 months. Maybe COVID will, God help us, but if it sort of comes back around for the second wave, we'll see how that affects us. But we're not disrupting our core business so much that it would sink us, right? So I think crawl, walk, run when it comes to verticals and testing is the best way to go to market. Pete, do you have anything to add there?
Fully. I mean, I think the thing is that it's such an entrepreneurial mindset, which is probably fun for you, Jess, because I like founding sales. My book on startup sales is circles around the thesis of that early on when you're developing a sales motion, the founder has to be responsible for that sales motion, usually because you're the most expert. But then what ends up happening is like, as you move into like a new vertical or a new segment or whatever, that's a new sales motion. Like it'll rhyme with the previous sales motion, but you have to approach it experimentally. It's extremely important versus, all right, well, like we know, like use SalesLoft as an example. We know we can sell the hell out of sales engagement software to like inside sales or to like SDR organizations and inside sales organizations that sell mid ASP to other like technology organizations. It's obviously going to be the same in financial services. Let's just hire 20 reps and go after it. That's a really great recipe for having like 20 reps that are not costing you a lot of money and not attaining at all, right? So I think like the experimentation process is extraordinarily important. Normally, like with organizations that I work with, it's doing that at an early stage. But one of the things that you see this all the time is like startups mess themselves up in a big way. Usually the way that they mess themselves up is like going up market, because their investors are coming and be like, we got to get our ASPs up. Let's go up market. Let's start like attacking some of these enterprises. And so like when you do that, you're going to start finding new product requirements that are blocked. Like, turns out we need our SOC 2 too. Weird. Turns out we need SAML authentication. Turns out these organizations up here, they don't use that CRM for down here. We got to integrate with like Microsoft Dynamics, or like, oh, we got to integrate with like NetSuite. What? They have a CRM? Oh my God. Right. And so by like tiptoeing into it, what ends up happening is like you figure those things out sooner. And so it's really fascinating to hear how Jess is like the tip of the spear here before then being the tip of the spear in the next one and the next one and the next one. Like it's a very rational approach. I think, Jess, you said that it was originally, that's like Salesforce's methodology. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that, well, Salesforce had a lot more dollars behind them at this stage when they verticalized. But yeah, I mean, the first two verticals Salesforce went after were financial services and HLS. And I think that sort of set the tone for how all SaaS companies sort of go to market based on product market fit, of course. But yeah, it's sort of that measured approach of not disrupting the core business so much that it would, make the business go upside down, but giving you enough runway to be successful.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good
Barry.
to see you. Good to see you, Barry. Congratulations on the new role. Have a good have a good weekend. Tell the kids that they the art is looking really good.
Appreciate it.
See you.
Thank you.
So actually, Jess, I have a question for you, since I'm more of a velocity sales. I was talking to a customer sales leader earlier. Their ASP is like 100K or whatever. I was like, teach me your ways. I'm more of a mid-market, lower mid-market, sale, like higher velocity. How like how is enterprise selling working in a virtual environment? Like, I mean, it's kind of, it's related to what you were saying about the financial services thing, but like,
Yeah.
how are you guys contending with that?
So I'll answer that question in two ways. I'll answer it from a cultural and morale perspective, and I'll answer it from just a pure business perspective.
Right.
Business first, I don't want to say that we are capitalizing on the COVID environment, but the reality is that our product, sales engagement, really is probably one of the biggest tools an organization needs right now. So many companies have never worked from home, especially with roles like SDR or BDR, right? Or inside sales. These traditionally have been in office with a lot of leadership around, a lot of support, you know, they have that camaraderie. So our tool has really been benefiting a lot of the organizations that are kind of like, what do we do now? Like, how do we have visibility into what the reps are doing? How do we even know the reps are doing the work? What's working, what's not? How do we coach them, right? All of the things that you get in an office environment, we're sort of replacing and replicating in a way. So business in the enterprise has been incredible because traditionally these are the organizations that have been to move to technology. And now they're saying that, wow, we don't have a process in place to handle this, but business has to continue. So for us, it's been actually, you know, we had our best quarter in the history of the company, the second best quarter in Q3. And I think that speaks to just the ever-changing work from home.
Well, so you guys are beneficiaries, like Zoom is a beneficiary, or like Mural or Miro or what have you. But but what about like enterprise selling, right? Because it's like, you know, meeting people face to face. It's like, you know, stacking up 4 meetings in a day. Or, you know, when you're coming on site, it's a lot of going out to dinner and seeing people at conferences and like drinks and breakfast and so on and so forth. Like, how are you guys contending with that?
I think what we're finding is all of that is unnecessary. I think it was fun, right? I hate
that is a very intellectually honest answer.
It is. I hate to say it because I've been traveling for 25 years, and part of that is that's the fun of enterprise selling, right? The fancy steak dinners, and nothing beats that, you know, that intimate connection you can have and build with a prospect or customer when you're face to face with them. But the reality is because we're in this environment, we are finding that we're being productive. We're getting deals done without having to do all of that. And I think that will actually shape how we continue to go to market in the enterprise down the road. Do I think that we'll get back to a place where that will still matter? Yes. I think there are certain industries, you know, construction, manufacturing.
Sure.
You're still going to have to be in person. But for now, I think we've kind of evaluated and pivoted that, hey, we can get shit done without having to be in person and spending all this money. Likewise with offices, right? That's a major shift as well.
Yeah, it's almost like T&E is being replaced by like Zoom subscriptions. Well, at least the T is.
Right.
But the E isn't. And I'm like really fascinated by the E component of it because I like a pretty left brain guy, and I run my sales organization in a pretty left brain capacity. So when we were acquired by Monster, that was kind of my introduction to kind of like relate. I mean, Monster at the time was kind of selling like a pretty commoditized product job posting. So there's a lot of relationship selling, right? And so obviously and I think that stuff often becomes more important in enterprise environment where you need to have a good relationship in order to both like have trust for a large transaction, but also trust from the champion to like, to share information with you, what's happening inside the organization, what's happening inside the deal, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of the ways that you like foment that trust is, dinners with people, good old like in vino veritas, right? Like, boozing it up. And so like, yeah, how do we replace the E in the T&E?
I know, it's interesting. So we have transferred that E to more internally focused, and that speaks to the morale piece. So instead of spending the E on the customer, we're spending it internally on more resources to reach them. So companies like Sendoso, right? We're upping there so we can send personalized gifts. We
Yep.
are setting up the Zoom happy hour with the prospect or customer and sending them a great bottle of wine and having a conversation that way. But
So
yeah,
you guys are like sending something in, and then
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it will it will never replace being able to have a glass of wine sitting next to somebody and start like
yeah,
that excitement that you feel and like that connection. But it still gives you a little bit of that. I mean, drinking wine at home and drinking wine in a restaurant still gives you a buzz. So
yeah,
either
totally.
way, guys.
Yeah, I remember. So when we were fundraising a little bit ago, this VC who ended up like not investing, which is hysterical. They're like, actually, can you talk with one of my partners about like the about one of his organizations, and they have a very relationship driven go to market, and like the outside reps have like no idea what to do, and it's kind of gotten me thinking about this. Yeah, a couple of things that we've been doing. I know that so actually, this is what like one of my new obsessions. I'm going to drop it here in the chat room for everybody. Cocktail Courier,
Oh
awesome,
yeah. So
so
awesome.
great. Yeah, you can just like send people a bottle, like whatever the ingredients are for the cocktail, like either a 2-pack, a 4-pack, or a 6-pack. I think I usually go for like the 4 because like two's too little, right?
Right.
We and we actually did that with our team as well. The team really liked it. I haven't done a virtual meal with a client yet,
Yeah.
but I have done it with our team for sure. So I haven't tried it with a client yet.
Yeah.
But
I think there's lots of things you can do. We did a virtual cooking class and
oh wow,
that that we were I think it's a great opportunity to get like a bunch of prospects together
oh
on
for sure,
Zoom, right? And it's like you're in your own home, you're all doing this cooking class together, so you kind of feel that camaraderie,
yep.
and there's a lot of follow up from that. So I think the E is still there. I think we just have to think about it differently.
You did that with clients, the cooking thing?
Yes,
Really?
yeah. And it was
Wow.
super fun. It was super fun, and everyone, it's the new norm, right? So
Sure.
everyone just kind of is game for things.
Yeah.
And you saw your clients' kids in the background and like their spouses, which brings another element of closeness, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, it's even almost more intimate because you're seeing directly into their personal lives, not their persona at like Master Steakhouse. But
Yeah. Fair
but
point.
yeah,
One of the things that we did, so the modern sales team, so the way that we fund the modern sales community is through sponsorships, and so like usually that's through like offline events or digital events or whatever. But also the team will do executive kind of like high end events on like a bespoke basis. And they did a virtual wine tasting with a sommelier that was extraordinarily popular, right?
oh
And it was
yeah,
just, and they sent like a couple demi bottles of wine ahead of time. So it was like, I mean, it's like not cheap, right? It's like $200 worth of wine or whatever, and then the sommelier was there. But the cool thing about it is you could do it with like 20 people on a Zoom, and they would go into breakout rooms,
right.
etc. Let me grab actually John Soroka had a fun question here. Let me go ahead and grab him here.
All right, let's do it. Ryan, I'm also a fan of The Bachelor. I see your question there.
Eh,
Hey, Jonathan.
Hey,
Hello.
there he
I wish I had
is.
some food that I could shove in my mouth to look like I was just eating with you guys and enjoying the meal
Um,
chat.
so John, can you introduce yourself, and we can get into your question?
Sure. Jonathan here from lovely Massachusetts, and advise, consult, and otherwise mess around with $0 to $10 million SaaS startups. So Jess, I was curious. You've enjoyed later stage fast growth and riding that Bronco. If you were asked to come first in the door with somebody that either had some founder-led successes in sales to lay a little groundwork, or is just starting out, just some of your thoughts on how the founders should think about that first sales hire and what people going into that. And I'll just say, in my experience, there's a lot of confusion on what shape the peg in the hole is between wanting a bag carrier and wanting somebody that's not a full-blown CRO that can build it out, and then a lot of indecision on what to pick at the end of the day. So just conversations that can kind of go round and round, but you know, the outcome is never usually where they start. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that, and how you would go about it from either side or both.
Yeah, it's a great question. And to your point, I've enjoyed joining organizations where that hire had been made and probably since left. Ultimately, maybe several times.
Yeah.
I think if it were me, what I would say is you want someone with operational excellence, right? I think if you can get someone that can come in as that first sales hire and set up the infrastructure correctly to build out your sales organization from the start, that's key. Because oftentimes why organizations aren't successful, or we see turnover in that VP of sales role or first hire relatively quickly, is they just don't have a process. They don't have a tried and true process. They don't have a methodology. The infrastructure wasn't set up correctly. And then everyone's just kind of doing their own process and throwing a bunch of spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. So number one thing I would say is operational excellence. Number two is grit. They have to be willing to get in the trenches and do the work. You know, coming on board at that role at this stage is really difficult because you see the opportunity of the ivory tower, but you got to build all of the staircase to get there. So grit is fundamental. And then I would say somebody that has breadth of experience across commercial and enterprise business, so that they can understand the differences and the nuances in the sales motion. But primarily you'll be starting from a commercial sales motion. So someone that gets that repeatable, scalable process, that can implement it, execute it, repeat it, hire, teach, repeat. Those are the couple of things I would be thinking about right away.
Yeah, and I think that, so this is like advice, I think, for the sales leader or the first sales hire. I think one of the best ways that sales leaders, kind of first sales hires, kind of get hosed is by coming into organizations where there isn't anything, where there isn't a sales motion, and so that can be really problematic because you know, most sales leaders are used to they come from sales land. They come from being an AE, having sold something that already had product market fit, had marketing support. They were a sales manager, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas, you know, very early on, when you're concocting a sales motion, when you're discovering that sales motion, it's a very different skill profile and behavior than selling something that's already, you know, already in market and what have you. And so I think it's dangerous this isn't to say that people can't figure it out, but generally what you want to see is that there's existing success there. I think Mitch Morando had a really good post on, it's either on Medium or LinkedIn, about like it's like DEF CON stages of organizations and whether they're ready to ingest a new sales leader. So I think the first thing, and actually let me actually find this health check document that I have. Just like understanding how healthy the go-to-market of the organization is. Yeah, let me just drop that into the chat there. Because it could be okay that an organization doesn't have a go-to-market in place. You just got to know that's, oh, cool. How many deals have you guys sold? Oh, like 2. Oh, okay, cool. Are they unaffiliated, or are they, you know, are they unaffiliated, or are they other members of like your YC class or your Techstars class or whatever? Oh, yeah, it's the company that I worked at before this and the company that my co-founder worked at before this. Ah, got it. Right. So just like really having crispness around what you're actually walking into is really probably the number one thing, because, and I think one way to think about this is like founders don't know anything about this stuff, right? And so like where they learn from this is like they're watching, you know, some they're at some conference, someone's talking to them from stage, and there's no context to the advice or what have you. So they're like, oh, I heard I need a VP of sales. Okay, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need, like, probably what you need is like someone who was a rep 4 years ago and now is a sales manager at like LinkedIn or whatever to come in, can sell alongside you, and then hire a couple more reps. Like, yeah, maybe their title will be VP of sales or head of sales, but like their title right now is the person that you're hiring right now, like their title is not head of, or like VP of sales or head of sales where they're coming from. Right.
Mhm.
So like, just really it's kind of like, I think the way that you described it is great. What is the hole that needs to be filled, and what is the peg, and let's just be very crisp about what that is.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Always fun to talk about, but thank you for the new perspectives.
Wonderful. Good to see you, Jonathan.
Thank
See
you,
you.
guys.
Have a good weekend. I think actually Dan's got a good question here. Let me go ahead and grab you here, Dan, Mr. Grossberg. There he is. Mr. Dan, you are muted. Hey, there he is.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, how are you, Jess? Good to see you
Good.
again,
How are
Pete.
you?
Good, thank you.
Oh,
So,
wonderful hat. I recognize that hat. Attaboy.
I'm King Branding here, right?
Yeah.
So my name is Dan Grossberg. I work at a company called Clyde. We're a small startup, about 22 employees in total. And we are a tech company that helps online retailers offer extended warranty and accidental coverage. My question relates to personal branding. So I probably spend maybe a little bit too much time on LinkedIn, just trying to gather nuggets and learn from folks. And you can certainly see when people are trying to become, recognizable names or brand experts, things of that nature. Folks on my team have seen it as well, and they've actually raised the question, like, how important is this? Do you think that would be a viable strategy for me or for us to help get our company's aim out there by becoming brand recognizable ourselves, or just becoming experts in the space? And just in general, like, if you're not a consultant, is it important to have a good personal brand?
Yeah. Lots of opinions on this. What do you think, Jess?
I think the short answer is yes. I think having a personal brand is incredibly important. I think there's a line between having a personal brand, though, and a brand and being a brand ambassador for your organization.
Sure.
Because if there's misalignment of core values there or opinions, then it can almost be detrimental. But I think at the stage of organization you're at, that's a great social selling opportunity, right? To become a subject matter expert and be posting and getting exposure on LinkedIn. Of course, I worked at LinkedIn for several years, so I'm very passionate about it. So I may be giving a bit of a biased answer here. But I do think, as you mentioned, Dan, you spend a ton of time trying to learn from people. You are getting exposure, right? And even subliminally, you're understanding and learning about things that you might not think you are. And that's what will happen for your brand, and then for you as the person, as the ambassador of your organization. So I think it's incredibly important, especially from the work from home now. How else are you going to have that connection with such a broad network then without the social sort of selling element of it? So I lean towards yes and must do, but I also, again, will disclaim that I'm a bit biased.
Well, I think one thing that folks need to be clear about is, like, what are they trying to create a brand for? Like, so I'll give you an example. One of the reasons, I've done a bunch of writing on sales excellence, sales operations, data-driven management, et cetera, et cetera. It's not on accident. We sell sales performance instrumentation software, right? My audience on LinkedIn is sales operations people, sales leaders, et cetera, et cetera. When I was previously an HR tech entrepreneur, the things that I would write on and speak on and what have you were on recruiting, technical recruiting, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the thing that's important to remember is, like, what is this publishing and brand building in service of? Is it in service of you as a professional such that you could be like recruited?
Mhm.
Well, in that situation, and I think what ends up happening is like people kind of conflate these two things, and also kind of like it's kind of fun to like, fuck around on LinkedIn and like kibitz about like sales topics or whatever, but like, does that actually matter for your job? Right? Like, and it might, like in Jess's case, like they they sell sales engagement software, we sell sales performance analysis software. Sure, it potentially does. If you sell extended warranty software or what have you, it kind of like might not, right?
Right.
And so I think there just from the standpoint of like a founder or a sales leader, there's like are you engaging in behavior that will help you sell more, drive value? Like I think what Jess was talking about was like alignment. Is that effort aligned with like revenue acquisition, new meetings, et cetera, in your topic area? Or are you spending company time on burnishing your own brand for your next job? Well,
Sure.
that's kind of, I mean, you can hear it in my voice, like that's a little kind of like maybe not great, right? And and I think moreover, you look at the amazing sales leaders in our industry, um, like uh, um, and they're conspicuously absent from from those conversations, largely because they're spending their calories on managing their teams or enabling their teams or like unblocking deals or what have you, right? So I think it's important for people to kind of be mindful of what sort of perception might be established by the aggregate amount of time spent kind of like you know around the digital water cooler that may not necessarily have a point of putting new meetings on the calendar with your customers, putting like advancing deals, like penetrating accounts, etc. Just kind of like think about those two things, because it's hard. Because guess what? LinkedIn has there is an incentive for us to like, we open LinkedIn to go look up a prospect. Oh, here, well, oh, there's a video right there. Oh, what's going on right here? Oh my God, it's 15 minutes later. What happened? Right?
Like TikTok for professionals. You just go down the rabbit hole of all the videos.
Yeah, for sure. Wonderful, Dan. Well, good to see you, man. Have a good weekend. Okay.
Thanks, Sandy, both.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, the LinkedIn feed is no joke. Gotta marketing solutions. Gotta like make like they obviously have an interest in generating more impressions for sure.
Yeah, they do.
So I have a question for you. Let's talk about like organizations that are selling multiple products.
Mhm.
And I think actually SalesLoft is kind of a little like more and more in this situation as well. Obviously, it's like a suite, but there's conversation intelligence. There's oh God, what is Costello called now?
Deal.
Deals. There's deals, and
Yep.
then at LinkedIn there was like LinkedIn Talent, or sorry, LinkedIn Recruiter, and then job slots, and then of course there's like Sales Nav, and there's learning solutions. Like, what are like what are good ways of going about that from an early stage standpoint or even later stage organization? Because you jumped between a bunch of different products at LinkedIn, right?
I did. And the way that LinkedIn decided to go to market early from the very beginning was to keep them sort of disparate solutions.
Yep.
So they really hired, in a sense, they verticalized their different products because they set up marketing solutions with a bunch of subject matter experts that knew media, new agency sales plays, and we didn't really see a lot of crossover there.
Yep.
Talent sort of did the same thing. And then even with the Sales Nav coming on board, there was not a lot of cross-pollination. Now, they've changed their model a bit because they've collapsed a couple of the business units, and they're doing what they call the connected enterprise, which is mostly for their global accounts, and that's having one sales rep sort of manage all of the products. Us, we're a little bit different because all of our products are native within the platform, and so we typically go to market especially in the enterprise, with a sort of one platform play. And that's one sales rep that is a subject matter expert on all parts of our platform. And so we can identify the value prop across the platform for each of our customers. I've seen it work both ways. I mean, and then you have something like Salesforce where, you know, they have all the overlays, and it's like we have a core rep, and then we have every rep for every product that we've acquired. And when you are a customer, that is an overwhelming experience because you are dealing with 19 sales reps from one company. But it's obviously been very successful for Salesforce as they continue to grow in the billions. But there's a lot of ways to tackle it. I'm finding a lot of success with the one core rep right now owning the three parts of our platform, just because we can kind of relay that to the customer journey and how each part of our platform will play to that. And I think that's why LinkedIn is collapsing as well, because it's more in line with the customer journey. So that's what I'd say as far as delineating your product lines. Match it up to the customer journey, not to how you're thinking about revenue.
Right. Match it. I think, yes. The way that I oftentimes frame this to people is, who's the buyer?
Yeah.
Like if the buyer is substantially different, so like use LinkedIn as an example, right? Like LinkedIn Recruiter, talent acquisition was buying that. Job slots, talent acquisition was buying that. So like those are talent solutions there. But you know, the marketing solutions person, or sorry, the purchaser of like LinkedIn marketing solutions or whatever, that's like over in marketing. Right. That, and not just marketing. That's like digital. It's very specific. It's like digital marketing. You know, put some of your spend on this, and then sales, kind of the similar situation. So I think that made a lot of sense there. And so when that's usually what I say to folks, like, okay, cool. Does the buyer overlap? If so, maybe centralize that in a given rep. But I like how you're describing that as align it to the buyer's journey there. I think, do you guys typically sell like all three at once, or is there kind of like, hey, let's enter with like core sales engagement and then later we'll upsell onto deals or what have you?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the customer's business challenge or objective. Like what problem are they trying to solve is typically how we get in the door. But because our products are so tangentially successful that even if we're leveraging cadence to get in the door, likely they'll need conversations and likely they'll need deals. We certainly package it from a perspective as one platform. So even if we're going in with cadence, we will say like, this is the price, and it gives us some negotiation leverage, but also it opens up the door for more conversations. But I think it just depends on it's all about the customer. What are you trying to help the customer solve? And that's how we position our product.
Excellent. Well, guess what? We're out of time.
It's amazing it went so fast.
Isn't it though? Yeah, so everybody, thank you for joining us, Jess. That was super awesome. I'm so glad that we were able to have you. I think next week we've got what do we got next week? It's not. I think we have Dr. Sean Fowler in a couple months here.
Amazing.
But oh yeah, I know, right? Yeah, next we have Marilyn Velas, who's VP of Sales at Impact. She's super awesome. So we've got hit after hit coming for folks who maybe won't be able to join us in the future. We always send the recording out after the fact, so we'll be sending that out. We'll be posting it on YouTube as well, so you can find it there. If you're not a member of Modern Sales yet, just go over to modernsaleshq.com and you can go ahead and sign up. And otherwise, everybody have a great weekend. And Jess, thank you very much. Are you gonna any big plans for this weekend?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me. And no, luckily we don't have a ton of big plans. We're just gonna keep it casual with our 3-year-old going on 15 and see what happens.
That's right. You can be his wing lady as he's hitting up.
Exactly. That's what I am now. I'm his wing woman.
That's wonderful. Okay, well thanks for joining us, Jess, and have a great weekend. Okay.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.